असं लक्षात आलं. बायोगॅसचा बर
Good afternoon, everyone. I, Dr. Pranshuman Paras, co-coordinator of first 17 days Refresher Course 2022, welcomes you in today's session. It is our privilege and honor to be associated with our eminent resource person, Professor Manoj Patwardhan, sir. So before starting our session, let me introduce our resource person. Dr. Manoj Patwardhan is a professor in management department at ABV IIII Gwalior. He obtained his PhD degree in management in the year 2004 and master's degree in personal management and industry relations the year 1992 from Jivaji University College. He had presented a research paper entitled The Role of Leadership Traits and Their Impact on Managerial Effectiveness in the European Applied Business Research Conference held at Germany, and his paper was adjudged as the best research paper among the 240 research papers across the world. In November 2004, he has conducted a session on human relations at workplace under Workers' Participation Program, organized by Central Board for Workers' Education, Ministry of Labour and Employment, Government of India. Now, not taking further much time, I would like to hand over the session to our eminent resource person, Professor Manoj Patwardhan. Sir, please.
Okay, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So let me thank the team Prestige for organizing this refresher course. And I have been given the responsibility to take session post-lunch. Now, post-lunch, particularly from 2 o'clock onwards, it's a very, very challenging job, but then I like challenges in my life. So therefore, taking a session at 2 o'clock and then to an August gathering, we have been already gone through various research aspects for a couple of days. Engaging them and making them understanding the concept is a very challenging job. So first and foremost, consider me as one amongst you. Though I am here as a resource person, a bit much more experience on certain aspects with you. Therefore, I am before you. But please consider one amongst you. Whatever I am talking is not a rocket science. It's all we really wanted to talk about and discuss on certain aspects of researches. So therefore, my understanding about research and the topic that has been allotted to me will go well along with you. That's what I hope. So let's talk and understand how I'm going to start with my presentation. I have a habit that I always start my presentation with some sort of stories. And then finally, I try to relate those stories with the topic that has been assigned to me. Pranshuman, can I share the screen? Do I have the authority to share my screen?
Yes, sir, you can share.
Okay. So let me share my screen. This will give an idea that how things are going to make on certain aspects of things basically we are going to work with. Okay. So as I told you that I have a habit that I always start my story. Do you see a screen over here? Do you see a slide? The name of the slide is a wise
No,
camel.
sir, we don't want to see the slide, only the...
Okay, it's opening up.
Yes, sir, now the slide is opening.
Okay. Right. So that's a story. That's a story I really wanted to share with you. And then finally, I'll try to club with this important aspect. I have a couple of stories to share with you, particularly in the post-lunch session. So it's a story about a wise camel. If you see a screen, if you see a wise camel on my screen, I'll run through a next slide. Just to give a brief background about this story. It's a story between a mother camel and a baby camel. And a conversation is going on between a mother camel and a baby camel. So that's a background about the story is. So as I told you, it's a story about a mother camel and a baby camel. And you know that babies are very inquisitive. They keeps on asking a number of questions to their parents. So in the similar line, a baby camel is asking a number of questions to his mother. And because of the inquisitiveness, because of curiousness, because of anxiety, number of questions are being thrown to the mother camel. And the story goes like this. So the story is like this. The baby is asking, "Mother, may I ask you some questions?" The mother replied, "Sure. Why, son, is there something which is bothering you?" So the first question that baby camel asked to his mother is this: why do camels have humps? That's the very first question that baby camel has asked to his mother. Probably many of you know the answer. Can I ask someone that why do camels have humps? Anyone can share their story. Why do camels have humps? You know, let it be a two-way communication. So please keep on asking, why do camels have humps? Any probable answer for this?
Storage of water.
Storage of water, absolutely right. So that's how the mother has also replied the same kind of reply. Well, son, we are desert animals. We need the humps to store water, and we are known to survive without water. That's a really remarkable reply given by a mother camel to his son. But as I told you, the inquisitiveness, the curiousness hasn't stopped here. The moment baby camel has got the first answer to his question, the next question creeps into his mind. And the second question that creeps to his mind is, okay, then why our legs are long and feet around it? Any probable answer for this? Any probable answer for this? Any idea? Okay. So the answer given by mother is, son, obviously they are meant for walking in the desert. You know, with these legs, I can move around the desert better than anyone does, said the mother proudly. Another probable answer for this is that, in desert, we find n number of storms coming into the wind storms. And the probability of getting the camel buried under the storm, these long legs prevent camels not to get buried into those kind of windstorms. So the nature has already bestowed upon them the qualities, the characteristics about their important aspects. So the second answer given by mother is, these long legs I can move around, and even better, because we are the desert animals for them. The third question that creeps into the mind of a baby camel is, then okay, then why our eyelashes long? Sometimes it bothers my sight. Any probable answer for this? Please don't keep any kind of reservations. Any probable answer for this? No? The answer given by mother is, my son, those long, thick eyelashes are our protective cover. They help to protect our eyes from the desert sand and wind, said the mother camel with eyes remaining bright. So there are a couple of questions which baby camel has asked to his mother. Now the next slide is very, very important. I want you to go through this slide carefully and then try to retrospect how this is going to help us in those kind of important research that we are looking at. Baby is saying, I see those, so the hump is to store water when we are in the desert. The legs are for walking through the desert, and these eyelashes protect my eyes from the desert. Then what the hell are we doing here in the zoo? That's a story, but that story is only not for fun and entertainment. That story has got a very strong message, and the strong message is this: the skills, knowledge, abilities, and experiences are only useful when you are at the right place. Probably we all are under the gamut of doing research that is going to help us out. Now, this story has also provided us some sort of direction. So as a researcher, we have a number of inquisitiveness. As a researcher, as an investigator, we should have anxiety. As a researcher, as an investigator, we should have the curiousness. Which directions we are going through? What are the probable literature that we are going to look into? What are the types of research that we are going to into? How do we write abstract when we want to write? What is the impact factor of any journal that I am going to work into or publish into? So those kind of anxiety, those kind of anxiousness, those kind of inquisitiveness must be a prerequisite for any researcher or investigator. So the story is only not for fun and entertainment. The story has gotten background. With those background, I really wanted to give you a warm up, and that's how we are going to work into various other research aspects. On a lighter vein, we always say that love your job, but never fall in love with your company, because you never know when the company stops loving. That's a lighter part of this particular presentation is, but the main idea is this, that the skills, knowledge, abilities, and experiences are only useful when you are at the right place. Okay, so let me start with my typical presentation that will give you an idea how things are going to work into various aspects of things. Do you see a slide now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So that's a slide I really wanted to work with into, and a couple of topics are allotted to me by the organizers of this refresher course. So I'll try to justify those topics, and I'll try to ensure that we try to cover and understand few aspects of the topics allotted to me. So needless to say, the topics allotted to me is what is inductive and deductive research or reasoning. So probably you have already started refreshing yourself after enrolling into this refresher course, and at least you have a fair idea about what research is. You have a fair idea about how literature has to be done. You have a fair idea about what methodology you should adopt and what results and conclusions and inferences we draw, and how our finally research gets published into various categories of journals. But to begin with, let us understand what is inductive and what is deductive research or reasoning. So there are a couple of answers for this. I think the first thing that we really wanted to work into is what kind of research we are going to dwell with. What kind of research and what is my research domain? Should I go for deductive research or should I go for inductive research? Before we dwell into and trying to understand the domain of my research, let us understand first what is the difference that we are talking about. Now, inductive research or reasoning, they observe something first and foremost. They observe something and then they try to use those patterns, and finally they arrive at some sort of conclusions. So they always aim at developing theory. Most of the pure research or fundamental research is inductive by nature. They follow some patterns, they observe something, they follow some pattern, they arrive at conclusion, and finally they develop some sort of theory. So the fundamental aim of inductive research or reasoning is to develop some kind of theory. Newton's law of theory, Newton's law of motion. So those kind of theories they have developed. So certainly such kind of theories are known as inductive by nature. On the other hand, we have deductive reasoning or deductive research. Now the fundamental difference is that deductive always uses some facts, some rules, some properties, some characteristics, some definitions to arrive at a conclusion. Or in other words, what deductive reasoning or deductive research goes into, they always aim at testing the existing theory. So needless to say, first there should be inductive research followed by deductive research or combination of both. I'm not saying that you do inductive research in isolation or in silos and do deductive research in silos. It could be silos also, independent also, or it could be combination of both. But please understand the basic difference. The inductive research always tries to aim off for developing some kind of theories, whereas deductive research, it's what they do, they test the existing theory. That's a fundamental difference between inductive and deductive reasoning. Further slide of mine will also give an idea. So whenever we are going for inductive reasoning, think of it like this particular triangle. This triangle is straight triangle. We start with specifics and move to generalities. That's the fundamental characteristics of inductive research. We always start with some specific, some problem, and then from that specific problem statement, we move into generalities. It begins with a set of empirical observations, as I told you earlier. We try to seek some patterns in those observations and then theorizing about those important patterns. That's a fundamental aspect of inductive reasoning. I have a couple of examples also. That example will give you an idea what is inductive and what is deductive kind of things. So in inductive, the researcher always starts from specifics or specific problem or specific issues or challenges. And then from specificity, we move into the generality. So we start from this and we move to generalities. So it begins with observing some empirical data, seeking patterns, and finally developing some kind of theories based on this. Deductive reasoning always think of it like this. So it's an inverted triangle. So we always start from generalities and move to specifics. That's a difference that we are looking into. I hope I'm making any sense. So we always start from generalities. It had happened so, then we try to theoretize those kind of generalities in our locality, in our domain, in our geographies. So we always start with generalities and move to specifics. If the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true. That's a basic premise. For example, all dogs are dogs. So therefore they have ears. You understand what I'm saying? So whether we are going for inductive or deductive, but then if you ask me personally, most of the social sciences research or the management researches or management problems are deductive by nature, because we always start from generalities. We try to test the hypothesis, we try to test the theories, we try to either accept or we fail to accept the hypothesis. So we always start from already existing theories and we try to test those theories into our research. So most of the research that I talked about, whether it is social science research or management research, they are deductive by nature. I think some examples will give you an idea. This is an example of inductive research. Examples could be that every quiz has been easy, therefore the test will be easy. You got my point? So we already seen some observations, some patterns, and based on those patterns, we develop a theory. Every quiz has been easy, therefore we developed a theory that this test will also be easy. Another example you can always relate with yourself. The teacher used PowerPoint in the last few classes. Therefore, the teacher will use PowerPoint tomorrow. Are you getting my point? So these kind of reasonings or these kind of research are into inductive domain, because we are following some observations. We followed that teacher always uses PowerPoint in their classes, last semester also, before last semester also. So we have developed a pattern. And finally, we arrived at a conclusion that tomorrow also teacher is going to use PowerPoint. I hope I'm making sense. And this is what you can always reason, whether it is inductive or whether it is deductive. So these are the examples of inductive. Now, the examples of deductive, probably you may come to know the examples of deductive. This will give you an idea. Now look at what is the example that we are looking for. The brochure states that all newcomers in the institute must take a communication test. Probably I understand that Prestige Institute have been following this kind of deductive research, that every new entrant who comes and joins into such kind of prestigious institution have to go through a communication test. So the brochure already states that all newcomers in this institute must take communication test. You are a newcomer, so therefore you will have to take a communication test. So this theory is already existed. You are a newcomer and we are only testifying those important theories. So these are the examples of deductive reasoning. I hope the kind of example which I'm giving gives you a clear. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, good afternoon. Sir, my question is health sciences research is a inductive research or both?
Come again.
Sir, is health sciences research which has been carried out in health sciences areas, they are inductive or they are carrying in both inductive?
That depends upon what kind of problem you are talking about. I told you earlier also that you can do research inductive in silos, in isolation, and deductive in isolation, or combination of both. So it depends upon what problem we are going to face upon. The example or the problem that I just talked about is either deductive or inductive. But
sir, suppose some theories, science theories has been developed. So it may be inductive, or we are taking research in the context of some social paradigm, then it is deductive.
Yes. So if you talk about a peer research, it is going to be inductive by nature. But when you are trying to testify the theories of those research, it becomes deductive.
Thank you.
Right. So the example which I talked about, now you please tell me, what is the example of this? 90% of humans are right-handed. Amar is human. So therefore, Amar is right-handed. Whether it is deductive or inductive. Please tell me this kind of reasoning. Come again.
Yeah.
Come again. I'm not getting you. Dr. Meenakshi, come again.
Sir, it's a inductive reasoning because we are going to generalization to the specification.
Right. So probably the answer is this.
Yeah.
So it is deductive or inductive?
Inductive, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
90% of humans are right-handed. Amar is human, therefore Amar is right-handed. Another example is, you are a good student, you get all A's, therefore your friends must get all A's too. A is a grade, I mean to say. A is a grade. So let's understand what this example is. This is an example of inductive. So what I mean to say is that all oranges are fruits. All fruits grows on trees, therefore all oranges grows on tree. Again, you must see whether it is deductive or inductive. So these are the examples I'm just talking about into. Mikhail hails from Russia and Russians are tall. So therefore Mikhail is tall. So please understand that things, whether it is inductive or deductive, is not much of our concern. I'm here to just tell you the difference between what is inductive and what is deductive. Now, as I told you that most of the management research that we are going to talk about is deductive by nature, because we really wanted to test the already existing theories, the already existing hypotheses, the already existing patterns. So therefore, we are into the deductive mode more often. But then both approaches are used in various types of research, and it's not uncommon to combine them into one large study. I can give you an example. This you can put into inductive and deductive both. No, for example, I'll just give you an example. That a low-cost airline flight is delayed. I'm given a problem statement that a low-cost airline flight is delayed. So therefore, you can observe a pattern that another 20 flights from low-cost airlines are delayed. And then finally, you can develop a presumption that low-cost airlines always have a delay. So probably we are focusing into inductive. We have observed that low-cost flight airlines are delayed. 20 more low-cost air flights are delayed. So therefore, you have concluded that all low-cost airlines are delayed. Similarly, you can take them into the deductive approach also. For example, I can also give an example that this is what it has been concluded upon. Now, you can always start with the existing theory. What is the existing theory talks about? That low-cost airlines always have a delay. That inductive research has already proved it. Now, you can formulate an hypothesis based on this particular theory, that if passengers fly with a low-cost airline, then they will always experience delays. I hope I am making a sense. Inductive research already given in a theory that all low-cost air flights are delayed. But you can develop a hypothesis that if passengers fly with these low-cost airlines, they will experience delay. So it's a hypothesis we have formulated. Then you can collect the data. So you can collect the flight data of low-cost airlines. So all low-cost flight airlines in a different sectors, you can collect the data and find out how much delay is there. Then you analyze the data. 5 out of 100 flights of low-cost airlines are not delayed. Please understand what I'm talking about. You have made a hypothesis that all low-cost flights are always delayed. But after getting the data, after analyzing it, you find that 5 out of 100 low-cost airline flights are not delayed. So therefore, you are rejected in the hypothesis. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, sir, to interrupt you. Is there any change in slide, sir?
No, not yet.
Okay, sir.
Not yet. So I'm still into this slide. Right? I'm still into this slide. I have not gone into any other slide. Okay. I'm just giving an example. That how you can formulate the inductive and then you can take it into deductive kind of things. But in this case, your null hypothesis is rejected. That 5 out of 100 flights of low-cost airlines not delayed. So you can always talk about that 5 out of 100 flights of low-cost airlines are not delayed. So therefore, your null hypothesis you fail to accept. That's how you can always move into the deductive, inductive, vis-a-vis different kind of limitations and different kind of research that you are going to work into, right? So I just wanted to start with deductive and inductive, and then gradually I'll move into some other important aspects. Okay, so let me move into another aspect. Let's talk about how do we write the abstract. Writing is very, very important for me, because many topics are overlapping. So I'm just moving into the different. Do you see the slides of abstract? Is the slides appearing before you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Any idea what is abstract? Please tell us. Any idea what is abstract? Any idea what is abstract? Any idea what is abstract? How do we know what is abstract?
It is the brief of the research paper as such.
It is the brief of the research paper. Yeah, that's true.
To show essential details.
Yeah.
It should contain some motivating factors for the reader to read that research paper.
Okay. Okay, very good. But what is the purpose of writing an abstract? What is the purpose of writing an abstract?
So if somebody doesn't want to read the entire, research paper, they can read your abstract and understand should they go forward with it.
Absolutely.
It is like an advertisement, whether we would like to buy that product or not.
Absolutely.
So instead of going into the whole paper, I can get some inkling of what is written in that paper.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Thank you, sir.
I think you understand what abstract is all about. I'm happy that you understand what the abstract and how do we write about the abstract is. So the abstract should be the best part of the paper, as somebody has talked about, that it should be an advertisement. It should be a visiting card. So looking at your visiting card, the other person should be willing to call you inside your cabin and discuss. No? So your visiting card has to be so attractive. So the abstract should be so attractive and it should be the best part of your research.
So can we say like that it is a cosmetic exercise to make it so attractive that the reader of that paper should be interested in?
Absolutely, absolutely. The reader should be interested to read the entire paper by looking at your abstract itself. So we have been talking about that. That's what the abstract we are looking into, right? So it should be the best part of your paper. It is the most frequently read part of an article after the title. And it is a short piece of writing that tells you the main contents of book, research paper, speech, etc. Right? Now, but the purpose should be very clear about writing an abstract. What is my purpose? Why we are writing an abstract paper? So our purpose, our direction should be very, very clear when we are writing some sort of research paper in those important aspects. So it provides an overview of the article. Readers may read nothing else. So the sentences given in between the bracket is very, very important. It provides an overview of the article. Readers may read nothing else. It provides context for those who do read the article. It is used by journals to assign reviewers. So probably you might have gone through, many of you are reviewers also in some of the national international journals. So the editor will always send you some sort of abstract. So if you are happy with the abstract, for example, in our system, what happens? So when we are sending thesis to an international journals to be examined, first and foremost, we send the abstract of the thesis. So by looking into the abstract, by reading through the abstract, if the examiner is willing to examine the thesis, only then he gives his or her consent. So most of the journal editors, first and foremost, in a first place, always send the abstract to the reviewers. It is used by abstracting and information services to index and retrieve articles. That's very, very important. And it is used by translation services for foreign readers. So if you are a native language is something different and you really wanted to send journal to some international readers, by looking into the abstract, the translation services may offer you services. It helps readers decide whether to read the article. That is this important to me? It provides reminders for readers after they have read the articles, and it directs readers' attention to the highlights of the article. In general, the abstract reflects on the professionalism and integrity of the work. So with these purpose, normally abstract has to be written. But writing an abstract is not a joke, let me tell you. If I ask you to write an abstract in 100 words, I think no, you have a hell lot of time and you have a Herculean task to write the abstract in 100 words. Writing abstract in 100 words, I think if you look into the various journals and if you understand their guidelines, you may come across that the journals would only want to understand that what is your articulation skills. What is your articulation skills? How well you can write an abstract. So therefore, they deliberately ask you to write abstract only in 100 words. So writing abstract in 100 words is not a joke. And there should be some characteristics that we should always look into writing an abstract. It should be accurate, no doubt. It should be coherent, readable. It should be concise, specific, and selective. And which is the most important is that it should be self-contained, that is standalone. That's a very important aspect about writing an abstract. I think the point number 3 is the most important. It should self-contained, that is stand alone. What is standalone is important. No, it is complete and internally consistent. Can anybody help me in understanding what is internally consistent means? Please tell me, what do you mean by internally consistent? I'm looking for the answer. What does internally consistent means? Can anyone tell me what is it? Because I'll not allow you to know. It's not a monologue that I speak and then you listen.
Sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir?
It should align with the title. The content of the paper should be perfect enough to reflect what is the title or objective of the paper.
Okay. Any other interpretation?
Sir, there should be a continuity between the headings or subheadings which has been included in the abstract. So the reader intention should be maintained with the exclusive objectives of the abstract. Otherwise, sir, it can be breakdown.
Okay.
If we writing something in the purpose or something in the novelty of the research and they are not correlated with each other properly, so it can break down the intention of the reader also.
Okay. Any other interpretation? Any other interpretation? Yeah, go ahead.
It should align with the subject. It should not deviate from the subject.
Okay. It should align with the subject. It should not deviate. You're very close to what I'm looking for. Internally consistent means that whatever sections or whatever sections we have in a full paper. For example, normally we have introduction, literature review, research methodology, objectives, hypothesis, conclusion, discussions, referencing, and finally. So these are the several all sections that normally completes one full paper. By internally consistent, I mean to say that each and every important sentences from each section should come into the abstract part. And therefore we say that it should be complete and internally consistent. Of course, we should not write all kinds of references. Tables and figures should be avoided in abstract. There should not be any table or figures at all. No or few observations, it must be defined. And conclusion should be based on data, info presented within the abstract. So these should be the characteristics. And therefore, we call it that it should be a self-contained, standalone part of your research paper is, right? I hope I'm making sense in what we are talking about, what we call as the characteristics of abstract is. But what abstracts are not? Normally people get confused with the abstract and writing and research paper is. What abstracts are not is again very, very important. Not substitute for the article and should not be cited as references. That's very, very important. It is not a substitute for any article, and we should not, the abstract should not be cited in no case. It is not a summary of the entire article, should present main finding. It do not contain enough information for a critical evaluation of the research and not fully peer reviewed. Up to 60% are never followed by a complete scientific article. So please understand what abstracts are not, and you should not cite the abstract in your research paper or in your references until unless you have read the complete scientific article for that matter. And the content of the abstract, it must define purpose and scope of study. That is the question. It must describe materials and methods used. It summarizes the results and state the conclusion and their implication, right? So when you come to a content, so this is the content that we talked about, that it must define scope. That is the introduction part. I hope I'm making a sense. That when you define purpose and scope of study, we are talking about the introduction part. When you are describing the materials and methods used, you're talking about materials and research methodology used. Summarize the results, that will result. And finally, when you're talking about conclusions and their implications, we are talking about the discussion part in the entire research piece, right? Materials and methods is the how part, result is what part, and discussion implication is so what part. I hope, please understand you have to read between the lines. So result is what and discussion implication is so what. So who is going to value your research? What are the implications of your research? How your result is going to make an academic body of knowledge? What contributions you are going to make to the society? What implication it is going to have on society? So you have inferred something, you have shown the result, but who is going to take, who are the takers, who are going to apply your research? So what part is very, very important to work with. And therefore we have said that so part work, discussion and implication becomes very important for each one of you to work on those important aspects. Shall I move to the next slide now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So this is what we have been talking about, what are the various types of abstracts that we are working with. So normally there are 4 types of abstract that we come across usually by reading through a newspaper, through the research papers or articles. The first is the descriptive abstracts. Number 2 is indicative abstracts. Number 3 is informative abstracts. And number 4 is presentation, meeting, and poster abstracts. So let's talk about what is descriptive abstracts. The descriptive abstracts always indicate the scope of the findings. No, it always indicates the scope of the findings. For example, your findings must provide the scope for the future course of action, the scope for the future research. So whenever you will find written in your abstract, you can give an idea that it must be a descriptive abstract that we are reading. It contains little substantive information. It always emphasizes the report itself and not its contents. For example, a study was undertaken, the data were accumulated, and some interesting observations are made. Our conclusions are given like this. So such kind of abstracts are known as descriptive abstracts. When you formulate a problem, data were gathered, you analyzed, some results were drawn, you infer, and finally you conclude. Such kind of abstracts are known as descriptive abstracts. But please understand, they always give you a scope for improvement for the future researchers. So normally, whatever abstracts we are writing, we are always providing a future course of action, a line of indication to the future researcher. Such kind of abstracts are known as abstract. On the other hand, we have indicative abstracts. Now, please understand what are the contents of indicative abstracts that normally we come across. The objective are always stated in the indicative abstracts. We always give summary to the data sources. For example, if you collected primary data or secondary data, you have to provide the sources in the indicative abstracts. Source in the sense that we have collected data from service industries or we have collected data from manufacturing industries. The source doesn't mean that you have to cite very specifically, but you can always give a summary that out of 500 data, 300 are from service industry, 200 from manufacturing industry, some kind of data sources to be provided. Specify criteria used to select studies, that how do we arrive that we are going to take data only from this service industries. So you can always specify the criteria that we have taken data only from those service industries which have a sales turnover of say 500 crores and above. Similarly, for manufacturing industry, you can always provide a guideline that we have taken data from manufacturing industries whose sales turnover is 250 crores or more. Now, some sort of criteria you can always specify in your indicative abstracts. Describe guidelines, state main results of review and methods, and state conclusion and potential application of the result. That means implication. So such indicative abstracts are always written after the paper has been written. I think the last line plays a very, very important role. Such indicative abstracts are written. The third kind of types of abstract is presentation and meeting abstracts. It must be comprehensive, must strictly follow format and content rules, and must be neat. It often contain more details of methods. That means in this case, the focus is more on the methodology part. The focus is more on the methodology, what kind of process, what kind of methodology we adopted. More likely to include implications, maybe published in conference proceedings, provides opportunity for feedback from others in the field. So normally when you are presenting in a conference, you always provide a scope for improvement and there is always a scope for feedback. So maybe the audience or the chairperson or the keynote speaker or the reviewer will provide you feedback there and there itself. So you can always note down those feedback. You can make necessary changes in your research paper. And again, you can send it for other publications and all. So it is written before the paper has been written, because it is for, you would always like to have a scope for feedback in the presentation and meeting abstracts, right? So for example, you might have attended a number of conferences, research conferences in the past. So when you are presenting your paper, the chairperson or the audience or the other researchers from other institutions, they must have provided you the feedback. So therefore, it is always written before the final paper has been written, or when you send it for publication. And finally, we have poster abstracts. It includes lots of illustration, tables, and graphs. You have to keep words to a minimum, because poster papers are more to be indicated through illustrations, tables, and graphs. The text part is as minimum as possible, because it's a poster paper. So it is, you consider as a billboard and not a summary. And there's a ready-made templates of posters available online. So for example, if somebody asks you to present the poster paper or abstracts, you can download those templates, readily available templates, and then you can fit your illustrations and graphs into those templates, and it can be shown to the presenters. Such kind of abstracts are known as poster abstracts. So people decide whether to read your poster in the first 3 seconds. So for example, if the reviewer would look to your poster abstracts within 3 seconds, 4 seconds, they can decide whether I should go further or I should contact you. Otherwise, he'll ask me, say, thank you very much. So such kind of abstracts are known as poster abstracts. So finally, you remember, when we're talking about the abstracts, please remember that make the abstract the best part of the article. Make sure it stands alone and double check every piece of data. Because as I told you, it is just like your visiting card. If there is a spelling mistake in your visiting card, if your degree is wrongfully inserted in the visiting cards, if your address and email and cell phone wrongly text in your visiting card, you can understand what kind of impression the other party is going to have. So abstract, consider your abstract as your visiting card, and make sure that it should be as attractive as possible. Okay. Any doubt so far? Please ask me, because I'm through with the abstract part as well. There are 2-3 more parts that I have to look into. If you have any question, please ask.
So, sir, the type of abstract we should go for, it depends on the our content of the paper, no, sir?
Correct. It depends upon the content. It depends upon the aim and scope of your paper.
Okay, so it should be a subsequent activity after writing the script as such. Am I correct, sir?
Right. If you are going for substractive abstract, then probably it is being written parallelly.
Okay.
But if you are going for some other, for example, indicative or poster or presentation, then you can write it after your paper is written.
Because ultimately it is the
gist
concise part of whatever is written and whatever is researched.
Correct. It is the gist of your paper.
Okay.
Okay. So one thing is clear that, yeah, go ahead.
Sir, what type of abstract we have to be considered for the empirical research papers?
Descriptive.
Descriptive.
The first
what is the basic difference between empirical and review papers?
You see, empirical basically is based on some facts and observation.
Okay, sir.
Right. Yeah. And in descriptive, you not only include the facts and facts and figures, but and other observations. You always basically include the other parts also in descriptive result. For example, it always indicates the scope of the findings. You emphasize the report. So you have to, descriptive means all sorts of information should be available in the abstract. So therefore, I said that if you are not sure about what kind of abstract I should write, go for descriptive abstract.
Okay, thank you.
So, but then one thing is very clear, that abstract always provides you direction. Abstract always provides you direction. And if you are lost with your direction, then probably you end up into a very different kind of research and different kind of things. So while writing an abstract, while writing a research paper, your direction your understanding, your goal should be very, very clear. I'll give you a story. I think that story will give you an idea that if you fail with your direction, what happens? What chaos may happen to those important aspects. So do you see a slide appearing before you, Coca-Cola?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's a story, it's a real story, but then with the lack of direction and vision, and if you lost those important aspects, it is a debacle for the entire organization. So it's a story. It's a story is about the disappointed salesman of Coca-Cola returns from his Middle East assignment. He was disappointed. So why he was disappointed? So when he came back to India, a friend asked him, why you were disappointed? Why you came back from Middle East? You have been appointed as a salesman of Coca-Cola in Middle East. So it's a conversation. So when he came back to India, a friend asked, why were you not successful with the Arabs? The salesman explained, when I got posted in the Middle East, I was very confident that I will make a good sales pitch, as cola was virtually unknown there. So since there was no Coca-Cola normally in the Middle East, so he was very confident that he will make a good sales pitch. But I had a problem. I didn't know how to speak Arabic. So I planned to convey the message through 3 posters. So he planted 3 posters in the billboards. And the first poster said that the man is crawling through a hot desert sand, totally exhausted and fainted. So he was crawling through the hot desert sand and totally exhausted and fainted. The second poster which he has planted is, now the man is drinking our cola, our company's cola. And the third poster is that the man is now totally refreshed. Then these 3 posters were pasted all over the place. That should have worked, said the friend. I think nothing wrong in this. The first poster is a man is crawling through the hot desert. The second is he is drinking the cola. And the third is now the man is totally refreshed. Nothing is wrong. I mean, there is nothing wrong in these posters. That should have worked, said the friend. The salesman replied, well, not only did I not speak Arabic, I also didn't realize that Arabs read from right to left. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I also didn't realize that Arabs read from right to left. Normally, we Indians read from left to right, but Arabs read from right to left. So for them, this was the first poster. I'm refreshed, but after drinking your cola, I got fainted and exhausted. And that's how he was unable to sell the pitch. Although his intention was absolutely good, right? But he didn't realize in which directions I really wanted to go. He didn't realize the local condition. He didn't realize what are the local values. He didn't realize what should I should take into considerations. And as a result, it was a debacle and he has to come back. He was highly disappointed. He didn't understand. He didn't realize that Arabs read from right to left. And that's how, unless we lost in our direction, unless we lost somewhere, we are not able to do any kind of research that we are looking at. I hope I'm making sense. I'm basically trying to relate. I'm trying to relate the stories with the kind of research that we are working on.
Sir, in this case, you mean to say that the slides were to be put in the reverse direction?
Yes.
Okay.
Slides, the posters.
The posters were to be.
Right. So no, these are planted 1, 2, 3.
Right.
The Arabs read as 3, 2, 1.
So it should have been 3.
Correct.
Third one should have been put in first place. Okay.
But he didn't realize. That's what the point is, no? Because he is lost in the entire game of having the cola sales pitch.
Okay.
So we are so passionate about writing the abstract that somebody sometimes realize that the kind of directions I'm looking into, we lost.
Okay, sir.
So that should not happen. We should always try to stick to our goals and direction that we are looking at. That's what my point of contention is. Okay.
So you mean to say that we research scholars should aim at our goal in a systematic way by reading the location specifics also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. We should be doing real research, in fact.
And when we are doing a research, we must play emphasis to the local conditions.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Very insightful message, sir.
Right. Thank you. So we are talking about the descriptive abstracts for that matter. This is how we try to work, and this is how we try to work on those important aspects. Let me go to the literature review part. I think this is also not new, but I'm just giving you an idea that importance of literature review and how literature is going to help you out in carrying out any kind of results that you work on. So I'll be just running through a slide because this is not a new concept. I'm sure the very first day when you attended the refresher course, literature review was playing an important aspect. So this is what I'm just running through a slide. It's an written summary. What is literature review? Somebody asked you. It's a written summary of the journal articles, books, and other documents that describes the past and current state of information. That's very, very important. This particular part is very important, current and past. In literature review, you always tell to our investigators and researchers that please focus on the past literature review. When I say past literature review, my focus is on the recent literature review. For example, if you are doing a research in 2022, you should not have reviewed literature review of last 1 decade or 2 decades. It should be as current as possible. It should be as recent as possible. So, sorry. So the information must contain past and current state of information. Literature review is the presentation, classification, and evaluation of what other researchers have already written on a particular subject, right? So therefore, somebody has already defined literature review as an interpretation and synthesis of published work. It is an interpretation and synthesis of published work. This is what is important I am talking about. Again, I have realized, or whatever little experience I have with my students, I have realized that whenever I discuss with my students, or you must have already also noticed because many of you are teachers and professors of management, you also must have realized that whenever students are discussing with you on a research topic and research articles and research problem statement, in the event of discussion, you might have noticed that they actually jump into research methodology portion first. Sir, can I apply regression? Sir, can I apply SEM? Sir, can I apply CFA? Can I apply EFA? Can I go for other quantitative research? Can I apply multi-decision criteria methods? So they are so obsessed with the research methodology part that in the event of applying the current and very complex research statistical tools, in the process they forget that how literature review is going to help me out. Please understand, research methodology is only a tool that will give you some result. Good, bad, effective, not effective, that's none of my business. But ultimately, they are the statistical tools that will give you some output. You put in any garbage, they will give you some kind of output. So when personally to me, what is more important is literature. My literature has a flow. Is my literature is able to identify the research gaps I'm looking for into? Is my literature is going to give me a problem statement? Is my literature going to give me an objective that I'm going to set? Is my literature review is going to help me in formulating the hypothesis? After all these, I'll collect data and some tools I will apply. No, so I'm not saying that tools should not be applied. They should be systematically followed and recent methodology has to be adopted. I'm not saying that. But what I mean to say is that we should not always obsess about research methodology, because research methodology is the next step. The first step is literature review. And if my literature review is not proper, if it has not been scientifically reviewed or viewed, then probably further my steps are not going to be scientifically proven. So it is an opportunity to persuade your examiner that your research is relevant, worth doing. And therefore, I have made these bullet points in a bold statement. It is very important that will definitely convince your examiner that whatever research I am doing is relevant, worth doing, because I have done a scientific view of going for those important aspects. So it will give you an insight to contribute something new in this subject area. Now, 3 stages at which a review of the literature is needed. At an early review during the period of your research, and review at the stage of preparing your final report. Now, one can argue with me, sir, why when I'm preparing a final report? Because final report is only being prepared when everything is over. No, so somebody can argue with me, sir, what is the relevance of point number 3? Can anyone tell me what is the relevance of point number 3?
Sir, in case of systematic literature review, sometimes we study the papers for months together. And when we are at the last stage, then we may have to include some more recent papers, we have to again review whether something has happened, because whatever topic I am writing a research paper on, that might have already been published before me also.
Right.
So just to avoid those kind of nuisances,
absolutely right,
to take care of those kind of situations,
absolutely,
it may be necessary.
Absolutely right. And another interpretation is that when I enrolled myself into research, say in 2022, probably I am going to finish my research after 3 to 4 years. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So 2022, I have started enrolling myself result. I've already started reviewing the literature, say for an year up to 2023. But actually, I am going to write my final thesis in 2025 or 2026. So when I'm actually writing my thesis in 25 or 26, many research have already been carried on. Some new vistas of new research have come into. Some new variables might have come. So in order to capture those variables, in order to capture those variables and review literature into my thesis, I need to review it even if I'm preparing for my final report. So therefore, one should not, and no variable should be escaped before you write the final report of your thesis. So therefore, review at the stage of preparing for the final report is again very important. That's how we normally work it. Okay. So there are some 5 steps that about how it has to be done into. So I'm just going through very important, because these days a lot of databases are available. So you have Scopus, you have Web of Science, you have Tetherfund, a number of databases are available. So one should be familiarized yourself with online databases. So IEEE, Scopus, Web of Science, Emerald, AppScore. So there are a number of databases available. Only point is that you have to use the relevant database. For example, if you are going into social research or say management-oriented research, Springer is not going to help you out, because Springer normally publish the scientific research. But if you are going for management research, then AppScore, Emerald are more important for you to go into. Taylor and Francis, or these are very important publishing houses that will help you out. And when you really want to do some analysis, then Scopus and Web of Science is again very important. That will give you an idea. So familiarize yourself with the online databases. Use the relevant database. Always start with very generic key terms. For example, if you are searching your data in Emerald or in AppScore, please try to use the generic key terms. So when you are inserting key terms, that should be very generic. For example, if you are doing a research in say organizational effectiveness, so try to use the term organizational effectiveness. So when you use those kind of key terms, some output will come. And based on those output, you can redefine your topic. You can identify a landmark or classic studies or theories. And that's how you please try to come in. That's just step number 1. So there are 5 steps, very scientific way of doing a literature review. Number 2 is that you locate the literature. So use academic libraries. Do not limit your search to only on electronic search of articles. That's very important. No, so if possible, go and use academic libraries. So academic libraries, that means the print version vis-a-vis the electronic version. So you have to have the combination of the print version and the electronic versions of your articles. Use primary and secondary resources. So I think you are very familiar with primary and secondary resources, and I should not emphasize on those things. So primary source is reported by the researcher that conducted study, and secondary is report find that have come from the primary resource. So it's a best to report most primary resources. So then you can use different types of literature. You can take the summaries, encyclopedias, dictionaries, glossaries, handbooks, statistical indexes, reviews, synthesis, books, journals. So, I mean, what I mean to say is that all kind of different types of literature you should go into, right? And then finally come to your conclusions now. Step number 3 talks about that rely on research journals and articles published in national or international journals, because they are the primary sources and nobody can challenge that. And please don't use Wikipedia or WikiLeaks as your source of citation. I repeat, don't use Wikipedia and WikiLeaks because they are not authentic sources. So yeah, when you are taking an article from the refereed journals, which is published in national and international journals, probably that will give you an idea. So prioritize your research, look for research articles and avoid much possible opinion pieces. So when somebody says that in my opinion this will happen, please try to avoid those kind of articles, because research won't allow you to go for opinion. Research never allows you to go for opinion. Opinion has no room in literature or in research. So you try to blend qualitative and quantitative research in your, right? And that's how you can always look into and find out how things are going to work into important aspects.
Sir, can you please go to the previous slides?
Yeah, please. So this basically talks about how to read.
Before that,
previous
slide, please.
So, should I move to the next slide?
Previous.
Okay, previous. Okay. This one?
Yes, sir. Just a minute, sir. Look for research articles. What is, sir? Opinion pieces, sir?
Yeah, opinion pieces means sometimes when you are going through a secondary research in the magazine or in some periodicals, there are some articles, which are relevant to you, but the author says that in my opinion, people are not happy with their work. So it is only an opinion that the author is basically describing or indicating. This could not be a part of your research. Therefore, I'm saying please avoid the opinion pieces in your research.
Okay,
you can go through it for your reference. There is no harm in that. Because please don't quote opinion pieces. That's what I mean to say.
Because somewhere I had read that even we can quote the opinion from the speakers in the conferences.
Right. That is okay for the qualitative research. That is okay for the qualitative research. When you are interviewing someone, and when you are interviewing someone and he is getting the statement, but for them also there is an article. I mean, you have to apply some statistical tools. For quantitative, we have a number of statistical tools, SPSS and through Excel and other kind of things. For qualitative research also, there are some statistical tools. For example, NVO.
Yes,
please go through that NVO. NVO will help you how these qualitative statements or opinion statements or interview statements to be converted into research.
Okay.
Are you getting a point? Yeah. So only after that you have to convert them and then you have to present your work.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So that's how. Should I move to the next?
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I want to ask whether we can only write the literature review for research papers only, or can we include the articles which we take information from the journal articles?
No, articles it can also be taken.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Should I move to the next slide then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how to read research articles critically? I mean, appropriate strength, weakness, and some limitations. So you need to identify your research aim and question. So problem statement is must. No? And then finally, you identify your nature and type of study. Is researcher's value position explicit? And identify location, data, sample, method used in the entire kind of things. So that's very important. Again, so examine the use of theory, whether it is my deductive research or inductive research. Are analysis methods clearly explained? Are conclusions appropriately supported by evidence? And what are the implications for policy and practice? That means, what is my contribution to the academic body of knowledge? Right? So we are coming into the steps now. Step number 4 basically organizes the literature. So create a file. I think I'm just running through a slide because these things you already know it very well. How we.
Sir, your way of explanation is more important because we may be aware on we may be having bookish knowledge, but implications of these statements is more wonderfully explained by you. So please carry on.
Okay.
Thank
Because
you, sir.
I have two more topics to be covered, and I'm looking at my watch. It's already 3:05. My time allotted to me is 3:30. Anyway,
no, it's up to you, sir.
Anyway, I'll try to look into where I will help you out in understanding. Again, you can always look into some kind of table. So summarize the literature in table or concept map format. Please try to ensure that you have to insert the tables and figures in your entire point of view. You can create the tables using the table feature within the Microsoft Word. You can create it initially in Excel also. So that's how you need to work on those various kind of aspect to how these things are going to work in. Is that it enables you to sort your findings according to variety of factors. So you can always sort by date and then by author, sort by methodology and date. So if you're using literature, Excel, you have an idea that sorting
interesting challenge.
Entire kind of. And then finally, how do we structure the literature review? That's very, very important for each one of us. So there is no one ideal structure for your literature. So talk to your guide about this or your supervisor, how he wants you to structure your literature review. Consider whether you wish to organize your literature review chronologically, thematically, by development of ideas or combination of these. So that depends upon you and your supervisor and the guidelines of university where you wish to submit your thesis. Make sure that you always explain your structure for your reader and have a clear narrative. So the idea is that whether you follow chronological or developmental of ideas kind of thing, but it should be very clear, flow, coherent, and should be very simply present to the reader. Reader ultimately must generate the interest in reading your literature and your structure. Right? So this is how you can consider your purpose before beginning to write. You can consider how you resemble your notes and all. You can always plan and describe theories, plan to summarize critically. So I'm just giving an idea that how things are going to work into those kind of important aspects. And finally, you have a reference. Referencing also a very important part of your literature review. You can use any referencing style. It could be MLA, it could be APA, it could be Harvard, it could be IEEE. Depending upon what you are basically writing on, you can have a number of referencing styles, right? But please provide full details of all sources cited in the dissertation. You should always include published books or articles, book chapters. List alphabetically. Make sure you understand the university regulations on plagiarism. Consult your department guidelines for more on referencing styles. You understand what is plagiarism, no? You understand what is plagiarism?
Yes, sir. Not giving the credit to previous researchers.
Right. So plagiarism is very important. Ensure that normally the standard plagiarism or the range for plagiarism is 10%. Up to 10% unintentional plagiarism. I repeat my word. Please, what I'm saying. 10% unintentional plagiarism is allowed. I repeat, 10% unintentional. I hope I'm making sense between intentional and unintentional.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So unintentional plagiarism up to 10% is allowed, provided you have cited the author. You have cited the previous literature. So this is how things are going to work in those important aspects and how things are going to make into when I'm working into those important aspects. Right. So I hope this is how things are going to work into important aspects. Right. Any doubts so far? Please ask me. If you have any doubt, please ask me. You can always work and you can think of any doubt, please ask me. Is it okay? Any doubt?
No, sir, for me at least.
Okay, so if there is no doubt, let me move to the next important aspect that we are looking for into, and that's how things are going to work in the literature review aspects. So once your literature review is thorough and systematic, another very important aspect that comes is the identifying gaps in the literature. I think that I feel is the most difficult part. How do you identify gaps in the literature? By the way, do you know what are the gaps? What are the research gaps? Do you know what are the research gaps? Can anyone tell me what is gaps?
Suppose in some area, based on our literature review, if you think that some portion of the study has not been catered to by the previous researchers, then that gap or that research area becomes a research gap, so that we can do further research on that.
Sir? Hello? Hello?
Participants, please wait. There might be a problem, challenge in the connection. So, sir, might be joining.
Dr. Parashar, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
So can I continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was asking, is there anyone who can tell me what are the gaps? What gaps we are looking at?
Sir, gaps are the unaddressed issues which are underlying in the research problem itself, and that should be addressed on the basis of the scope of the study. It may be methodological gaps. It may be some literature review gaps are also there. It may be on the basis of tool and techniques which we are using that not be addressed, or the type of research means maybe it can be conducted on the only qualitative, not on the quantitative. So these are the gaps which has to be addressed in the research.
Okay, fine. I absolutely go with what you talked about. So gap.
लेकिन सर एक चीज है हम रिसर्च गैप जो है हम लिटरेचर रिव्यू कर लेते हैं and then we find research gap. But we start with our own thoughts of research in a particular direction. So there is sometimes mismatch कि भाई मैं कहाँ से start करूँ, कहाँ से पहले research gap लूँ कहीं से या फिर अपना कुछ idea ढूंढूं.
नहीं, मेरा पर्सनल ओपिनियन है कि पहले आइडियाज मस्ट कम टू योर माइंड दैट आई वांट टू डू रिसर्च इन दिस पर्टिकुलर फील्ड.
राइट सर.
तो वो आइडिया आपके पास आ गया, उस पर्टिकुलर फील्ड में आप जब जाते हैं, लिटरेचर करते हैं, फिर वहां से आपका आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ गैप शुरू होता है, ना कि रिवर्स.
That means you mean to say it is a narrow down approach towards our research.
For me it's a narrow down approach, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है. narrow down approach की भी बहुत critics अवेलेबल हैं. They say rather than narrow down, let it be a top down approach. You start from top and then finally you come to conclusion.
Right, sir.
So there are, you see, that's the beauty of management research, that it is contingent. It's flexible. Some critics says that narrow down approach is not good. Some says narrow down approach is good. That is not point whether it is you are applying for narrow down approach or top down approach or bottom up approach. What is more important is that are you able to identify the gaps?
Okay.
No, that is, please don't lose your focus.
Okay, sir.
Focus is how do you identify the gap? You can have n number of applications, you can have n number of approaches.
Okay, so whatever you idea you take initially and develop it, and based on literature review, whatever research has not been done in that ideological thing, we have to recognize that gap, right, sir?
Correct. That's how the gaps are to be identified in the literature. So the purpose of the identifying gaps is very, very clear. It allows you to consolidate the known information. That's a very basic purpose of any research gap. You can consolidate the information that is available. It always informs your research decisions. And finally, you can always argue for funding. By argue for funding means, for example, if you're writing a project to say some sponsored agencies, so you can always write that these are the research gap I want to address, therefore give me funds. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. So argument for funding is always a research gap. For example, you are writing a project for ICSSR. You are writing a project for AICTE. You are writing a project for UGC. You are writing a project for DSIR. you're writing a project for CSIR. I mean, there are n number of sponsored agencies available. So how do you convince them that please provide me a fund? I want to do a study in this area because there is a huge gap available. So it is always an argument for funding. So first two are okay for theoretical PhD writing, but third is important when you are really wanted to grab some funding. For example, entrepreneurship. For example, social funding. For example, social area. So there are a number of areas where research gaps are visible. Grab those gaps, convert it into project, and then send it for the sponsored funding agency. Are you getting my point? So that's a third point, which is very, very important. Second, you can always argue for funding, even in your institute also. For example, if your institute has a policy of providing a faculty initiation grant, you can always look for those faculty initiation grant. You send a proposal to the top management, but in that proposal, always focus on these are the gaps I would like to identify in my project, in my research. So gaps will allow you to understand those important aspects. So as I told you that it is always that you must have a research question in your mind first. Only then you can identify the gaps properly. So do you have a research question? What do you know about this topic? And are you applying for a grant? This is how you basically talk about this. So there are methods to identify the research gaps, and these methods are environmental scanning is one of the very important methods through which we can identify the gap. Number two is rapid review method. Number three is a systematic review method. And number four is scoping review method. So these are the four methods through which we can identify the gaps. Let us understand each one of them. First is the
Sir, can you please elaborate on the research question and research gap?
The previous slide?
No, I'm asking a general question.
Yeah.
Research questions are to be framed first, or some research gaps are to be found first?
No. By research question, I mean to say problem statement.
Okay, sir.
By research question, I mean to say problem statement.
So that problem statement will come only after identification of research gaps, sir?
The problem statement should come first.
Okay, sir.
Followed by research gap.
Okay, sir.
So, sir?
Yeah.
So what is better to do to write in a research paper or thesis, research questions or hypothesis?
No, both are different two things.
Yes, sir. Only one thing we can write. So which is better to write? Because I was told by my supervisor to write any one of them, either.
Please understand, it is not that which is better to write. Should we write research question or hypothesis? Because the purpose of both things are different. Research question basically is giving you a problem statement in understanding that how we are going to achieve that. And hypothesis basically is an assumption that you want to test. So purpose of writing both are different. But if you have word limit, if the guidelines has a word limit, then probably you go for hypothesis.
Okay, thank you.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Otherwise, the purpose of both things are different. Huh? So don't get confused. But if there is a word limit, there's a word count limit, then go for hypothesis.
Okay, thank you.
So I was talking about that there are various methods of. So there, we are talking about the various methods of what do you call identifying research gaps. The first is the environmental scan. So as the name suggests, this environmental scan talks about that it's an art of systematically exploring and taking note of what is the external environment of your organization, in part to better understand the nature of trends, deep drivers of change. Environmental scanning are used to provide decision makers with knowledge about current social, economical, technological, and political context, and to identify any potential short and long-term shifts. Yeah. So environmental scanning is, you don't have to necessarily go into the business unit. Say, for example, if you want to do a study of, say, market condition, for example, soft drink in market conditions. I don't know whether if you read today's newspaper, has clearly talked about that the sale of soft drinks, or cold drinks, more popularly it is known as, have increased twice for the last 2 months. No, the sale of cold drinks or soft drinks have increased twice in last 2 months. So if somebody asks me what is the probable reason is the summer season.
Because of very hot weather this year.
Yes, this year. So environmental scanning basically help you to understand that what are the external environment that your organization is part of. So naturally, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Miranda, Parle, Thumbs Up, and all those soft drinks has a very conducive external environment, that is the geographical environment or climatic condition. So naturally, when you are going to scan, when you are going to identify the gap about the soft industry, about the cold drink industry, about the market industries, please understand that their external environment of your organization has to be scanned first. And that is known as environmental scanning of identifying the gap. So how do we identify the external environment? External environment can always be identified by SWOT, that is a strength, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats, or maybe PEST. PEST is political, economical, social, and technological. So you have to have the external environment of your organization in a way that it is going to provide the decision maker that what knowledge I have about these understanding. So it is a word known as SWOT. A decade before, the term was known as SWOT, S-W-O-R-T. R stands for risk. But then researchers over a period of time have realized that there is a very little difference between threat and risk. So they have eliminated the alphabet R from the word SWOT, and now there is only one word known as SWOT, S-W-O-T, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. But a couple of decades before, R was also inserted in that, SWOT, S-W-O-R. But as I told you, the difference between risk and threat is very minimal, although there is a difference. So as a student of researcher, you must know the difference between risk and threat. Risk is when there is uncertainty and certainty both. So it's a 50-50 chances. Risk always have 50-50 propositions. But threat is always certain. Threat is always certain. There is no uncertainty in threat. There is always certainty in the threat. But in risk, we have a 50-50 proposition. For example, I'll give an example that you have to swim across a river which is full of crocodiles. Now, what is the threat and what is the risk? Can anyone tell me? I repeat.
The threat is that we will be killed by the crocodile.
Yeah.
And the risk is that we might be killed.
Yes. So crocodiles are threat because certainly they are present. And risk is 50-50. You may swim across or you may not swim across properly or swiftly. Are you getting my point? So, but for a understanding purpose, there is very very little difference. So that our word is alphabet is deleted, and now we have only SWOT. So what I mean to say is that to identify the research gap, you have to do some external environmental scanning, and that is known as environmental scanning, where the external environment are to be read, understand, accumulate the knowledge about political, technological, economical, social, demographical, cultural environment. Okay. And the purpose is so that you can identify the potential short and long-term shifts. For example, today's external environment is very conducive for the startups. So if somebody is interested into startups and venture capitalists and can start their own enterprises, that's the best environment available these days. So what are the potential short and long-term shifts you can always identify from external environment? Number two is the rapid review method. So it is a research methodology that uses shorter time frames than for other evidence-based summaries. It provides a timely and valid view of evidence, but sacrifices rigor. As such, RRs, that is rapid reviews, are both review and assessment and respond to urgent clinical and public health related questions. They aim to provide robust analysis of easily retrievable evidence in less than 6 weeks typically requiring fewer resources and funding. A classic example of rapid review of identifying gaps are development of vaccines. For this corona period, we have developed a vaccine. India is probably one of the countries that have developed the vaccines in less than a year. Normally, such kind of health-related vaccines takes at least 10 to 15 years to develop a robust vaccine. Are you getting my point? For example, polio vaccine. For example, chickenpox vaccine. For example, smallpox vaccine. For example, diphtheria vaccines. All these vaccines were developed, took almost 10 to 15 years to develop a robust vaccine. But as I told you, it was because there was a pressure and there was a pandemic. So therefore, the medical scientists have realized that time constraint is always there. So what they did, they provided a shorter time period because there was an urgent need to respond to clinical and public health related questions because pandemic was high. So such kind of identifying gaps are known as rapid review identifying the gaps. When there is a constraint of time, when there is a health related issues, when there is a public related issues, such kind of issues are to be identified using rapid review because there is less rigor. Of course, in vaccine making of vaccine, rigor was involved, but time frame was short. Within a year, vaccine was developed, and not only developed, it was implemented also. I mean, more than 100 crore populations of India are vaccinated. Do you know that? Do you know that more than 100 crore population of India is vaccinated? So when these vaccines are being done, we call it as rapid review method. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is known as rapid review method of what do you call identifying the gap, right? Another review method is known as systematic review method or SR method. So it is an investigation of a clearly formulated questions that uses methodological and explicit steps to identify, select, and critically appraise relevant research and to collect and analyze data from any appropriate studies that may be found. So when you are identifying the gaps using all systematic data, when you are taking and identifying literature from all the sources, look at the table, look at the triangle. So you are taking data from expert, you are taking data from case studies or reports, you are taking from coherent studies, you are taking from randomized controlled trials, you are critically appraised individual articles, you are taking it from critically appraised topics, and finally you are systematically reviewing it. So all the information, all the data, all the literature is collected from all the sources, and then investigating the problem statement and your research is known as systematic review of identification of research gap. And finally, we have the scoping review method. Scoping review method. Now, they are basically nothing but the exploratory project that systematically map the literature on a topic. So therefore, they are always around and making broader and more complex aspects. Now, this line is very, very important, that scoping reviews are often a first step in conducting a systematic review, right? So basically, if you look into systematic and scoping review, they are by and large same. However, there's the difference. The difference we'll know it in subsequent slide. But by and large, scoping review is the first step. So when we are going for systematic review, you have to go through the scoping review first, right? So ultimately, the most comprehensive technique of identifying gaps is the systematic review. So whenever you are going for identifying the gap, systematic review plays a very, very important role. I think this is the difference between systematic and scoping review. You can look into this and you can apply it basically on those important aspects. So study question is often broad. In systematic review, the question is quite focused. Search strategy is systematic and transparent. Here also it is systematic and transparent. Inclusion/exclusion criteria are flexible. You can include and exclude based on what scope you have, but it is always defined a priori. A priori means when you uses some facts and rules to arrive at a conclusion. That is known as a priori. So systematic review is always defined as a priori. A priori is when we are using facts, rules to arrive at a conclusion or to make a decision. Study appraisals are none or minor, and here it is the yes. That means because you are taking all the sources, all the study materials, that is important for you to make some important aspects. Okay. Should I move to the next slide? Because that next slide is again very important, is the impact factor that we commonly known as. And many of us are worried about impact factor, that we are going to work on those important aspects. So selecting a journal and its impact, it plays a very, very important role to work with.
Sir, breaking your leg, sir.
Come again.
What about, sir, break, sir?
Break?
Yes, sir.
No, I think within 10 minutes I'll finish.
Actually, participants, today will be only one session. So from 2 to up to what time sir will complete. So from then tomorrow we will meet with a new session.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Please bear with me. I'll not take more than 10 minutes.
Okay, no issue, sir. I thought it is up to 5 o'clock.
No. It is up to
no issue, sir. You can take time. No issues.
Yeah.
Then it's okay, sir. You can take your time, sir.
So
sir, regarding this scoping review, can you please explain once again, sir? Because
scoping review means when basically you have identified the scope of your research, and basically it is the first step of systematic review. Basically, it is nothing more than systematic review. So in order, since it is scoping review is one of the methods of identifying the gaps, therefore we have given the name, but it is nothing more. But it is a case of systematic review only. It is the first step. It's a prerequisite for systematic review. So don't get confused with what is scoping review is something very, very, very miraculous. Nothing of that sort.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So now let us come back to the impact factor that we are talking about, selecting a journal impact, because many of us are the impact factor is bothering us like anything. No, it is bothering us like anything. What is impact factor and how we are going to work with those important aspects. So how do we select a journal for our publication? That is very important. No, how do we select the journals and how things are going to work on those important aspects? So how do we select the journal? That plays a very important role. I think that will be an idea. That please talk to your colleagues and peers. That is the first important line I would like to talk about. That please talk to your friends and colleagues. They'll help you out in selecting the journal. Locate articles on your topic or similar topic and see what journals they are published in. That is scope and aim. Just to give you statistics, that more than 50 to 60% researchers or investigators or authors, they write the paper without referring to which journals they are going to publish it and without referring to scope and aim of that journal. This is a very alarming statistics I am giving to you. Still 50 to 55% people, they write the paper first. Whereas my understanding is that always keep in your mind which journal would you like to send your work for publication. So once you identify the journal and once you understand the scope and aim of that journal, then probably you'll be able to write the articles or paper based on the scope and aim of that particular journal. It should be not other way around. We write paper first and then look for journal. Kahan bheje, kahan bheje, kahan bheje. No, it should be identify journal first, understand the scope and aim of that journal first, and then write a paper. So make that understanding and look at previously published articles from journals you are considering.
But sir, I think the reason may be that the chances of getting published in a particular research journal, there may be bleak chances of getting it published. So the paper written by research scholars, if one journal rejects it, then they may apply it to some other journal. I think that may be the reason. I am new to this field, so
yes, no, you are partially correct. That normally they reject and then they send it to a number of journals. But then once you get an idea that how to write a paper and what are the nuances and what are the intricacies of writing a research paper, but of course that will only come after experience. I mean, when I say this and you adapt it, that's not a question. Only through experiences it will come. And don't worry about the rejections. No, Still, at this age and at this experience also, I am getting rejections from lot many journals. So don't worry about rejections. Rejection is a part of our life. If you write a paper and if it is rejected, don't feel bad. On the contrary, try to understand why the paper is being rejected from an important journal, right? And then try to incorporate. So when the reviewer is saying that your article is rejected because of these reasons, incorporate these changes in your next paper. Nothing wrong in that. So don't worry about rejection. Rejection still happens and it will continue to happen. Even in this stage, I am getting rejections every now and then when my research paper, when the research scholar writes some article. So rejection is not to be worried.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the advice, sir.
So this is how the point is. But then please avoid predatory publishers. I hope you understand what is predatory publishers. Predatory publishers are those publishers who take money for publishing your article. Such publishers I don't recommend. So please avoid predatory publishers, because once you test the success after paying the money, you will not rigor. You will not rigor. You will not exert. You will not look into data and other things. You will not try to go into deep about how a paper is to be written. So that's why I am saying, please avoid predatory publishers. Don't look for such publishers that please send your article to me. I will review it within 2 months and send it to you. But in return, I want some registration fees or some publication fees or some page-wise fees. I totally don't recommend such kind of publishers. So let's talk about journal impact factor, how things are going to work. So journal impact factor was invented by Thomas Ritter. ISI was founded by Eugen Garfield in 1958. So it was Eugen Garfield. He is the man who has coined this term impact factor. And impact factors is also, you can always take it from Journal Citation Report, JCR. So JCR basically all Scopus, Web of Science, and all other index, they basically publish the JSR. And through JSR, you can find out what is the impact factor of your journal. So let us talk about what is the impact factor that we're talking about. The impact factor for a given year is defined as the total number of citations received in that year to articles published in the previous 2 years, divided by the total number of citable items published by the journal in those 2 years. So I'll just give an example. That example will give you an idea. The impact factors for a given year are published annually in September and October of the following year in the journal citation reports. So previous 2 years or 1 year will be published in September, October, following year the journal citation reports. That's how it has to be. So an impact factor 1 means that on average, the articles published 1 or 2 years ago have been cited 1 time. An impact factor of 2.5 means that on average, the articles published 1 or 2 years ago have been cited 2.5 times, right? So impact factor is always for a journal. The impact factor of a journal is calculated based on a 3-year period and can be considered to be the average number of times published papers are cited up to 2 years. I'll give an example. I think probably then you'll be able to understand how things are going to work. Example this. For example, the impact factor 2010 for a journal would be calculated as follows. A, the number of times articles published in 2008-9 were cited in index journals during 2010. A. B means the number of articles, reviews, proceedings, or notes published in 2008 and 9. So impact factor would be A divided by B. It will come into 1 to 50. Right? The impact factor 2009 will be actually published in 2010 because it could not be calculated until all of the 2009 publications had been received. Impact factor 2010 will be published in 2011. So it is always followed in those important aspects. I think this will give an idea. Number of citations in 2009 of article published in 2007-8 divided by number of articles published in the year 2007 and 8. That's how things are going to work in the important aspects. This is another example that we can always quote into. that how things are going to work in the important aspect. This will give you an idea. Have a look at this. Have a look at this. This will give an idea. For example, CITES in 2003 to article published in 2002 is 4122. 2001 it was 4341. So sum has become 84631, and number of article published in 2 is equal to 597. 2001 is 577, and sum is 1174. So calculation would come like this: 8463 divided by 117, 7.20. So the impact factor is 7.209. Right? This is how the impact factor has been calculated. The impact factor cannot be calculated for the new journals. New journals we cannot calculate. At least journals must have a shelf life of 3 years. The impact factor of a journal is calculated by dividing the number of current year citations. I think this is what we talked about. So this line is very, very important. The general impact factor will be a quotient factor only and will not be a quality factor. So you never know what is the quality factor and what is the general factor for that matter. I hope this is what you are getting into various kind of things that is going to work in the important aspects. So the general impact factor will not be related to the quality of content and quality of peers. Journal publishes more review articles with the highest impact factor. It is not a constant. The number is expressed up to these. It is year specific. It is database specific. The value of impact factor generally lies between 0 to 50. And that's how it always varies from subject to subject. And the impact factor indicates the standing of the journal in the world. The impact factor may be considered as an indication of the quality of journalism in most of the cases. Right? So this is how the impact factor will give an idea. This is how you need to work on those important aspects is. Right? Now, my point is, when we have come across this important aspect, I think I would like to end my presentation with again one sort of story, and that story will give an idea that research is not about comfort zone. So I will end my presentation with a story because I started with the story. I'll end up with the story, and that story will give an idea. We call it a comfort zone.
The initial story was good. Hope this story will also be nice and insightful.
Correct. So it's a comfort zone. Once there was a king who received a gift of 2 magnificent falcons. Falcons means the birds. You can see these 2 birds sitting on the perch. First and foremost, the slide is appearing before you, know?
Yes, sir, it is visible, sir.
Okay. So falcons means the birds. These 2 birds are known as falcons, right? So Arabian falcons are the best in the world. So therefore, the king has received as a gift. They were Predatory falcons, the most beautiful birds he had ever seen. He gave the precious birds to his head falconer to be trained. Now he wanted these 2 birds to be trained. So the king has offered these 2 birds to the trainer. Months passed, and one day the head falconer, the trainer, informed the king that though one of the falcons were flying majestically, soaring high in the sky, the other bird had not moved from its branch since the day it had arrived. So out of 2 birds, one was flying majestically, soaring high in the sky, but another bird has not moved from its branch the day it had arrived. Now the king summoned healers and scholars from all the land to tend to the falcon, but no one could make the bird fly. He presented the task to the member of his court, but the next day, the king saw through the palace window that the bird had still not moved from its perch, from its branch. Having tried everything else, the king thought to himself, maybe I need someone more familiar with the countryside to understand the nature of this problem. So he cried out to his court, go and get a farmer. So sitting in the AC chambers, offering training probably may not work. So he said, go and get the farmer, because farmer is the one who is always on the field. He is associated with the birds and other creatures because he's in the field. So he wanted that farmer should come. Probably he may tell me the problem, why the bird is not moving. In the morning, the king was thrilled to see that the falcon soaring high above the palace. And he said to the court, bring me the doer of this miracle. How this farmer has done this miracle, bring him to me. The court quickly located the farmer, who came and stood before the king. The king asked me, how did you make the falcon fly? What magic you did? With head bowed, the farmer said to the king, it's not very easy, Your Highness. I simply cut the branch where the bird was sitting. I hope you understand what I'm saying. He simply cut the branch where the bird was sitting. So when the branch was cut, does the bird has any other option not to fly? The bird did not have any option. So every time the bird sits on the branch, the farmer simply cut the branch. So bird has to fly because the bird doesn't have any option. So the moral of the story is that we are all made to fly. We are all made to realize the potential. We all have to do as human beings. But instead of doing that, we sit on our branches, clinging to the things that are familiar to us. So always do a research which has got some novelty. Don't do a research which is mundane, which is always familiar. Unfortunately, we are into incremental research, but do a research which is some novelty, because one of the characteristics of research is novelty. Unless the research is not novel, unless the research is not very new, what is the fun of doing all those kind of things? So my point is, come out of your comfort zone. Don't sit on your comfort zone. The moment you sit in your comfort zone, you will not be able to do research. And research with novelty, research with newness, research with some characteristics. Unless those are not important, probably our research is going to be a futile exercise. It is only nothing but adding one very big research, a very big thesis into our library shelf, nothing more than that. So I urge each and every one of you that please do a research which brings newness. Please do a research which has some novelty, and please do a research we can contribute to the academic body of knowledge. So with that, I hope that I made some justification on the topic that was assigned to me. And I hope that in whatever sphere of your life, you do good, you come out with the flying colors, and I wish a grand success with this refresher course. Over to you, Dr. Pranchuman.
Thank you, Manoj sir. Thank you very much for these insightful messages. Really, we should not have incremental approach. We should go for novelty. It's very good thought, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So then I'm signing off then.
Thank you very much, sir, for conducting this wonderful session for all of us. And starting from his story.
I want to ask a question, sir. Is it allowed, sir?
Yeah, please ask a question.
Please.
Hello, sir. Actually, sir, as you said that the unintentional plagiarism should be up to 10%. Okay. And if you want to add some lines and thoughts of any author, any previous researcher.
It should not be 10%. It may be up to 10%.
Okay, sir. Then my question is, sir, if you want to add some lines or thoughts of any previous researcher or author as it is, and we cite him, then the particular lines will also come under the plagiarism or not?
That is what I'm saying. If you're citing that author, so that range has been given to 10%. Up to 10%, you can cite the author with their work and all. The remaining work has to be yours.
So we should manipulate the lines, or
paraphrasing is not allowed. We do paraphrasing, but it is not allowed in research.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay.
In our own words, I think, sir, we can write. Yes, sir. Whatever the message we want to cite,
yes.
It should be in our own words and shoot it to our study.
And universal truth is not plagiarism. For example, sun rises from east. It is a universal truth. So universal truth you can always write. There is absolutely no problem. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. I got the answers.
Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful session. And I was telling that starting from a story up to the last, you ended with a story, and you just explained the aspects of the research in a very understandable way. And in the last, we would like to present a token of gratitude.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful session.
Thanks a lot.
And hoping that we will meet again for some
sure.
More knowledge from you. Thank
sure.
you, sir.
Thank you very much, and all the best to all the participants.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you,
okay. Participants, we will meet tomorrow, because today there will be only one session. So we will meet again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.